Okay, awesome. So thank you for showing up, and can you say the prayer?
I'll say prayer. Awesome. Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this day. We're grateful for all of our many blessings. We ask that we'll have a good group meeting today and discuss what we need to and apply it to our lives and grow and become better people. We love you greatly and rest for these things in the name of my Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. So we're supposed to begin with a quick synopsis of the case, which says 7 months after the Columbia accident, the Columbia Accident Investigation Board presented the report on the causes of the accident. The board pinpointed the technical cause of the accident. Those identified organizational issues within NASA dating back decades. The board also reported how manager might have behaved differently during the mission and stressed the organizational shortcoming at NASA that contributed to the catastrophe. Okay, cool. Do you want to give the case facts? What happened?
Yeah,
so
interesting.
So enthused.
So it was when February 1st, 2003.
Yeah.
It was late. I had to email it to him because as soon as it hits 11:59, you can't see it.
Yep.
So it's super dumb because I feel like I have one more minute, but I don't. So what happened was a shuttle coming in for re-entry broke up because of the heat from the damage of the wing, just shredded it. They all died. So what happened? Am I giving like full history of, or just like
I think just
Columbia?
Yeah, just the Columbia.
Okay, so during takeoff, there's these foam. Also, there can be like ice that builds up on the huge rocket things. This foam piece came off. They saw it, but they couldn't really determine how much damage it would have done to it. So the whole time the space shuttle was in space, astronauts essentially knew nothing about it. And it was basically just like a mess of what seemed like red tape, people not knowing what they were doing, super unorganized. No one knew who they were reporting to, so nothing really ended up getting done. That's pretty much the gist of it.
That's pretty good. So we're gonna talk about the issues and why. And I feel like the first one was all the, how do you say it? Like they were not following protocol. They were like cutting corners, and just not following the rules. I guess I think that was the biggest one. What's up, Jason?
I just thought that there were just so many problems with their internal structure. I mean, you kind of like look at something like that on the news and you just kind of think like, oh, wow, that is such a tragedy. Like, you know, all these things happened, but there really was more problems like internally. And that is why it happened. And I think a big one was the management team. They were like super prideful. Like there was that one conversation where I can't remember, some guy like went up to one of the managers and was like, basically like, hey, like this is like a really bad thing. Like there's a lot of damage done to this. And then he just like then he finally just said, well, if there is bad damage, then there's not a dang thing that we can do about it. And I put that in my case study because I thought it was kind of funny, but like, it's true though. I mean, they were so prideful, like to even admit that they were even possibly wrong. And that was bad. By the time they realized they were wrong, it was too late.
And like the engineers felt like they didn't have to follow protocol because it would ruin their creativity or their whole career base, I guess. That was interesting.
I think that the teams were too distinct. Like it should have been like, we're all on a team, but you guys work on this and you guys work on this instead of this is a team, good luck. Like there was like no communication. Or if there was communication, it was telephone. So then when DTA was trying to tell MMT the problem, it wasn't portrayed as this is urgent. It was, it's whatever, you know.
I thought it was kind of interesting that they have a budget of, I don't know how much it was, but in the billions, but they didn't have enough cameras to catch what actually happened. I mean, I would think that you're going to send $1 billion machine up into space, you'd at least have something to document everything going on with it. But
Random, but I think my uncle may have been part of the underfunded crew to film. Because every time something launches from Cape Canaveral, he always gets flown out there by the company he works for, and he Fills my uncle's fault, guys. But one thing that I thought is just like, I thought it was so dumb how they seemed, if they saw something as a problem, but the problem continued to happen and nothing became of the problem, it's now not a problem.
Right.
So it's like,
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, I haven't changed my oil in 30,000 miles. My car's still running. I'm okay.
I don't
That's
need to change my
oil.
oil.
That's essentially the logic that they were using, which I thought was like really bad. You wouldn't think that they would do something like that. So that I was like, whoa, pretty surprised by that.
Yeah.
You would think it would be the opposite. Like, we still have this problem. We haven't been able to solve it. Like, we really need to get on top of this. But
Let's
they
make
did
this
the
top priority.
Yeah. exact opposite.
what blew my mind is when, I guess, like, they didn't even, like, the team or whoever, the MMT, like, I'm not expecting, like, everybody to know every detail about the aircraft, but I kind of am at the same time, because, like, somebody should know, like, something about the thing, and they didn't know anything about that particular type of panel. Like, nobody, like, had any knowledge about it. They were just, like, they were experts, but they didn't, like, have a clue about the panel. So they didn't understand that it was, like, fragile and, like, particular and, like, what would damage it. It said in there, like, they didn't even know. So it was just kind of like, they're sending this aircraft into space, but they don't really know, like, under what conditions it could fail. They don't know, like, completely what they're doing.
So whose fault is it then? Who's accountable?
I think it was both. I think it was all of them.
Yeah.
And then also what I found this funny is how their chain of command, how, like, when he had an issue, he was only allowed to email, like, his peers. Like, he wasn't able to, like, get it up there, to get it, like, pushed through. It was like, I don't know. It was just weird. It's just weird.
Because that one guy wrote the email that only showed it to.
Yeah.
He like
Yeah.
wrote it and then printed it out.
This is what I'm gonna say, guys, but
Check this
I'm not
out.
actually gonna do it.
That's pretty much what happened.
And then they had a policy where NASA was like, okay, you have to meet every single day that the mission happens. And then they met 5 out of 16 of the days, and then they knew there was, like, a problem. It was just kind of like, what the heck?
Like,
Like,
kind of threw me off. Really? Like,
that's a terrible percentage.
Because when they talk about the history and how they had the Tiger team for Apollo 13, that's like one of my favorite movies. There's visual images just like running through my head of something that they could have tried to have done while they were up there in space. Because, like, have you all seen Apollo 13?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, I was just
So good. But they just have, like, they essentially what they did was they were like, they took everything that the astronauts had available to them on board and they threw it on a table, and they're like, we need to get this square hole to fit into this round peg so that the oxygen, so their air could get filtered essentially. So then it was just like endless combinations trying to see what they could do to work. They could have done the exact same thing with maybe doing a spacewalk and having, you know,
find out what resources they have.
yeah, who knows if it's some super kind of ghetto type patch that they could maybe try and put on the wing. Maybe there'd be something, you know, maybe there was nothing, but you could at least try to see if there's,
Heads up.
yeah, you could at least put the effort forth to be like, okay, if this is a problem, what options would we have to fix it? And I'm sure you could come up with at least something. You would think.
I feel like if those panels are so fragile and kind of is a norm for them to get damaged, you would think that they would have some extras on the ship.
Yeah, that you could bond up there.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense, but
Well, and, like, if they would have communicated better with the astronauts, I mean, like, maybe they could have, I don't know, like,
Come in slower.
come in slower. They could have, like, maybe worked on it in space. They could have went out and, like, tried to, like,
they had the
Fix
International
it.
Space Station up there. They
Yeah,
have
like-
resources.
just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, don't come back until we get this figured out.
Yeah, sometime.
Now we're good.
No, I'll just come back to ask.
Just come back to
I feel like they were
You're
more
done.
focused on the next mission instead of fixing the problem right then. It's like, well, we have the schedule to meet. We had to do 50 launches in a year, so we just have to bring it back just so we can, I guess, stay on schedule. But if you're risking safety, then I don't think.
I'm sure the
Think about
families of those astronauts were very happy about that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, think about the people that were affected because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I certainly would not want to be on the next team.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. So what kind of solutions did you guys come up with in your case studies, recommendations, or?
Better communication.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely need to not like the crappy, I'm going to send an email, but not, I'm going to talk to my peers, but it's not going to go anywhere. Everybody's got to talk.
I said that maybe a reason why they didn't hold enough meetings was because maybe their meetings weren't effective. So I kind of went off by saying like that they needed to like make sure in these meetings that they had an agenda, that they knew what their purpose was, and that when there were problems, they would like fix the problems. Because I feel like you can just like hold meetings and then they can be like a waste of time for everybody. So if there's like a purpose and everybody like contributes, then that's successful. So they needed to do that like next time, make their meetings effective. Because they didn't tell us, but I kind of was guessing that they weren't effective because of the results.
I said that their managers need to be taught how to listen, because one thing is usually when an employee is coming to a manager, you shouldn't say, well, I'm not gonna go talk about this just to save you or just to, you know what I mean? It should be more of active listening and actually hearing what they're trying to tell you, and not just assume that they're just making it up or trying to look good or whatever. Because you are working with a bunch of experts that think they know about, you know.
Going on that, like you're dealing with all these experts and who feel like they know everything. I feel like you need to really focus on team unity and the dynamic of the team. Is because if you're meeting 5 times, it means that there's no unity, people don't want to meet together. And so I kind of suggested pretty simple, just like team building exercises, just kind of like form that foundation of unity. So
I think there needs to be like a chain of command where, like it said, you couldn't send it up to your superiors, you had to do it. I mean, it doesn't mean that like some intern's gonna email like the president of NASA, and like, hey, there's a problem. But there should be like a way for that information to be able to flow up to the top. And there was another thing that it said where in the naval something, it was they had to prove that you were wrong, but in NASA, you had to prove that you were right. So if you can prove that you were right, it's like, well, you have no proof, so it doesn't even matter. Where it should be the opposite way. It should be, hey, I think this phone strike could have severely damaged the right wing, and then NASA should be the ones, well, no, we'll prove you wrong, right? Just so that you think that would avoid problems.
I think there's also an email where someone sent an email addressing the problem to, I think, the DOD, and they didn't reply back. Like there was no communication at all. So
I just think that there was too much of, they just were so set that there wasn't a problem, but they were wrong. So I think part of being a good leader is that you recognize the fact that even if you have a PhD or if you have all this education, like you can still be wrong. And so you just have to like accept other people's opinions when they're different than yours. Like, well, I guess not like accept it, but just kind of like you said, kind of like prove it, and not just like automatically dismiss it and not even like listen and hear what you have to say.
we covered a lot of it. So it's got a conclusion and this world application.
Personal experience.
Yeah.
I've never been on a spaceship.
No.
Built one in Scouts once. It did not re-enter well.
My uncle was kind of personal experience.
Yeah, there you
My
go.
family's fault.
I can share an experience. So I worked in the dental field, and I'm just an assistant, so I'm not a doctor, I don't have a PhD, but when when I was training other girls to do the lab work or whatever, I saw that there would be a potential problem in that they'd break the machine. Well, when I tried to like say, hey, if something doesn't change, like something's gonna happen and it's not gonna be well, and you're gonna have to buy a new machine, or just when they were making the retainers, they were doing it wrong, so they were gonna break the machine. Well, lo and behold, I was dismissed, and then they had to buy new machines. So, like, just actively listening to your employees, giving them just like your ear. Like, yeah, you may think you're right, and that's totally right. I could have been wrong, and they could have done it right, but just even looking more into it, or just talking about it, or discussing it, or just dismissing it. A little bit better.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. To tell you the truth. Just the big, I guess, boiling down the main concept is to just work in a team and just learn how to just work together, you know, instead of just having that pride, you know. It's like how they say in the gospel, you know, just be humble and everything will work out, I guess.
Communicate
Yeah.
effectively.
Are there any last comments before we close, or? Okay, cool. Well, this is it.
Strong breath.